In this video, I'm going to talk you through some of the ideas surrounding genetic counselling and personalised medicine. Now, a genetic counsellor would talk to someone probably before and after genetic screening. Obviously, genetic screening can give an individual information about the genes and alleles that they have and the potential risks, whether they're likely to develop a disorder, whether they have a genetic disorder, whether they're possibly going to pass a genetic disorder on to their offspring. And after genetic screening, there can be lots of questions and concerns. So this is where a genetic counsellor would step in to help support and guide an individual, I would say. Now, I'm just going to go through some of the key things that a genetic counsellor might talk about with an individual or give advice on. So let's make a little list. The first thing, obviously, they're going to talk to the individual about the results of their genetic screening. So that could include things like, do they have an inherited or a genetic disorder? Or potentially, are they a carrier of an allele for a genetic disorder, like cystic fibrosis? Are they carrying that recessive allele for cystic fibrosis? If they are, they would obviously then talk to them about possible treatments that are available to them and discuss the pros and cons of those treatments, the likely success of those treatments. They might even discuss kind of potential lifestyle changes and things that the patient could do themselves to help relieve any symptoms if they do have a genetic disorder. They're also going to talk to them about, if this is a female or not even a female, a man, but they want to have children, right? And they may be carrying alleles for a genetic disorder. They're going to talk to that individual about the chances of passing the allele on to a child. The chances of having a child possibly with a genetic disorder. And this is something that you thought about in year 11 when you talked about two parents that are both carrying the allele for cystic fibrosis. If they both pass that allele on to their child would have cystic fibrosis. And there's a 25% chance of that happening, right? So they're going to talk to individuals about the risk of passing on that allele, and then the kind of alternative routes to having a child if that's what the individuals want to do. They could talk to, not nice to think about, but they could talk to them about potentially having a termination if they are already pregnant and have had amniocentesis, for example, to actually study the DNA of their unborn baby whilst it's still growing in the uterus. They could potentially discuss termination, or they could discuss the implications of continuing with a pregnancy if genetic screening has detected a genetic disorder in their unborn baby. So they could talk about financial implications of raising that child. They could talk about life expectancy for that child. All sorts of things, right? The purpose of this video is not to kind of give you an exhaustive list and get you to learn every single one. It's just to get you thinking about the role of a genetic counsellor and potentially some of the things that could be discussed following genetic screening, either of the patient's own DNA or genetic screening of their embryo's DNA or their unborn child's DNA. Let's just briefly talk about personalised medicine too, because that's something else that's on the AQA specification, right? It's not very clear what they want you to know, but personalised medicine is this idea that you can give someone kind of targeted medical treatments based on the genes or alleles that they have. So again, it would come following the results of genetic screening. Once you know exactly what alleles this individual has got, is there potentially a more useful medicine for that particular disorder caused by that particular allele or that particular mutation? Is there a drug that's going to be more effective, personalised to that individual based on knowledge of their DNA, right? Now, the best way to explain this is to kind of talk you through an example. So there is a type of breast cancer that is specifically caused by a mutation in a proto-oncogene. And cancerous cells that have this mutation have a protein that is overexpressed on their cell surface. So if an individual has this mutation, the tumour cells will have a protein on their surface that's called the HER2 protein. Now, you can then use personalised medicine. You can specifically give them the drug Herceptin. Now, Herceptin is actually an example of a monoclonal antibody, which you'll know about from GCSE and A-level. Now, this monoclonal antibody has an antigen binding site that is complementary to this specific protein. So if they have this type of cancer, and you know from their DNA analysis, their genetic screening, that it was caused by this specific mutation, then you know those cancerous cells are going to have this protein on their surface. Then you can personalise the treatment and give them this medication, because these monoclonal antibodies will bind to these receptors on these cancerous cells and stop that uncontrollable cell division. But that drug is only used for this specific type of cancer where individuals have this specific mutation. Hopefully using that example has helped you to understand a little bit more about personalised medicine, and hopefully we've had a little bit of a chat about genetic counselling, so you've now got some more ideas about exactly what they do and how they would help an individual following the results of genetic screening.